Look at the change in his facial expression. He went from optimism and hope to a feeling of absolute dread. Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Justin Trudeau thought he was on the right side of history during the September 20th Million March for Children protest when he tweeted he, quote, strongly condemns this hate, end quote. However, what he thought was his most loyal voter base turned on him because, like the fringe minority, they also don't take kindly to insults. Now he's claiming he never called them hateful.
Now let's get into it.
Rosa Saba with the Canadian Press. The Muslim Association of Canada and other groups have recently condemned your characterization of people, including Muslim families, who recently protested for what they call parental rights. You used the word hate to describe their concerns, and you've been asked to retract that comment and apologize. Will you do that, and should you have been more careful in the way you discuss this issue?
Okay, before we get into his response, I just want to reflect on what he thought was going to be a very positive question. And just look at the change in his facial expression. He went from optimism and hope to a feeling of absolute dread. I don't think I've seen him like that before. Like, he's terrified of this question. You can see it in his face. And he knows it's not going to go well. And I think he's just trying to think, okay, recite the answer, recite the answer, recite the answer. Don't make the situation worse.
Let's watch, shall we?
I will always stand up for everyone's rights in this country. Stand up for Muslim communities, stand up for 2S LGBTQI plus communities, stand up for marginalized people across this country, and protect them from intolerance and, yes, from hatred when it is there.
Okay. Sorry, I just want to jump in here because this is the problem that this far left community and Justin Trudeau doesn't seem to understand. You cannot promote the rights of one group at the expense of another. So when he says, I will fight for the rights of the Muslim community, meaning their right to practice their own religion and the freedom to practice that religion, that is actively being curtailed by the far left agenda. And it's the same with the Christian families, the same with all religious families.
It's even the same with atheist families.
It's exactly the same as atheist families because they have their rights to live their lives the way they want. Now, so do the LGBT, etc. group. The problem is when they then demand that you change your lifestyle in order to accommodate them, that's where the rights are infringed.
Well, and when they're telling you that you're a horrible parent for wanting to know what's going on in your child's life, or that you have to teach your child their set of beliefs, really is what it is. These Muslim parents or Christian parents or even the atheist parents, they're not going to the LGBT plus community and saying, we're going to teach you our religion, you have to believe our religion or lack thereof. No. So they shouldn't be trying to force their beliefs on anybody else. Like, you got to respect everybody's beliefs. Just because somebody does not believe what you believe does not make them a bad person.
Right. All they're saying is, leave us alone. That's it. That's literally all this message is.
And I mean, we went down to one of the marches after kind of the main event, and there were still some people sticking around that we got to interview. And everybody we spoke to said they had absolutely no issues with the LGBTQ plus community. They just thought that it was inappropriate to teach young children this doctrine.
And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. So Sorry, Trudeau. There's no fence sitting on this one. You cannot fight for one set of rights at the expense of another. Let's continue.
I am going to continue to work to bring people together and to make sure our kids are protected while standing up for everyone's rights. This is something that is core to Canada, that we defend each other's rights, that we support each other. And I never suggested that someone who's concerned about parental rights is somehow filled with hate or intolerance.
Didn't you?
Oh, really? Well, you can't rewrite history on X/Twitter, Mr. Trudeau. You certainly cannot. Because the day of the protest, this is what you posted. You've never suggested it.
So why do you have to make a statement like that if you're not implying that people protesting are being hateful?
On the day of the protest, when all the mainstream media was calling this an anti-LGBT protest. Sorry, Trudeau, you can't do that.
You can't have it both ways, man.
And everyone sees through it. Everyone. Now, the original question that was asked was around a letter that was written by the Muslim Association of Canada.
So this letter was drafted on September the 25th, so that's 5 days after the protest, and it was drafted by the Muslim Association of Canada. The Muslim Association of Canada strongly condemns remarks on recent protests made by certain politicians, including our Prime Minister, as well as statements from school boards, unions, and reports from some media outlets. By characterizing the peaceful protests of thousands of concerned parents as hateful, Canadian leaders and school boards are setting a dangerous precedent of using their position of influence to unjustly demonize families and alienate countless students. On Wednesday, September 20th, thousands of Muslims, joined by other faith-based groups, protested to raise their concerns, calling for their rights as parents in relation to their children's education. Their intent was to be heard, not to sow division. Parents should have the absolute right to advocate for the well-being of their children. The statements from Canadian leaders and school boards increase the potential for Muslim children to face increased bullying and harassment in schools, both by educators and peers, a trend that's already distressingly escalating. Civil rights organizations and Muslim organizations across the country have documented numerous validated accounts detailing situations where children have been coerced into activities that contradict their faith, or where parents teaching religious values to their offspring have been unfairly attacked. We call on politicians and school boards, beginning with Prime Minister Trudeau, to retract their deeply inflammatory and divisive comments and issue an apology to the thousands of Canadian parents hurt by these comments.
In short, the Muslim community isn't having it. And this was after Trudeau's tweet, by the way.
This was 5 days after.
So they're not having it. And the fact that Trudeau's response to the question, are you going to apologize or retract, was, I've never done that. You really think that's a wise decision? This is the problem. He has pinned himself into a corner. You have a very vocal, far left radical group that doesn't include all of the LGBT people, by the way. It just includes the really loud group and all of the activists that have nothing better to do. And now you have pissed off a religious community that isn't afraid to get very vocal. And there's a lot of them. And the big problem with that, Trudeau, is the other religious communities that would be demonized by the media and everybody else for speaking up now have an ally. And that's why the march exploded on the 20th. There was a lot of people there for it being a work day.
And the next one's going to be on a Saturday, which I suspect is going to be even bigger.
So it's been interesting to see how this is playing out. And this is why Trudeau was absolutely terrified, because he's in a corner. Does he further antagonize the Muslim community? Or does he alienate himself from the LGBT community? He tried to do neither. All he did was not antagonize the LGBT community. I can guarantee you he antagonized the Muslim community even more, because that was not an apology. All it was is further gaslighting by telling them, I didn't call you hateful. You're imagining things. That's not going to go down very well.
Well, and as the leader of a country, our country, he shouldn't be dividing people like this. If he had concerns about the protest, he could have expressed his concerns. Maybe they were safety concerns. Honestly, I can't think of anything else. That would probably be the only concern that I would have. Everybody has the right to protest in a peaceful manner. He could remind people of that. You don't have to say whether you believe one side or the other, like what your beliefs are. Just that all Canadians have the right to protest and do so in a peaceful manner.
Yep.
Done.
Yep. Now, enter Pierre. Pierre sees through Justin's BS very clearly. Like it's just a pane of glass. So he decided to weigh in. This is what Pierre posted on Twitter.
Now Trudeau wants you to believe he didn't say what he said. Yes, he accused parents of quote unquote this hate when they raised concerns about schooling. He devised to distract by creating villains out of Canadians, parents, hunters, truckers, and anyone else who he disagrees with. No more divide and conquer. Unite for Canada. And that's a great message. I think all of these politicians, the school boards, the unions, that's the message that they should have been giving. We got a message from our son's school that was the same crap. It was like, we support LGBTQ+, and anybody who's against it is hateful and blah, blah, blah. We got pissed off and sent a letter to the trustee. Now, I don't imagine it's going to do any good because this is one politician who does not get back to us. But point is, I told them, you should not be doing this. You're the authority figure. You should not be demonizing parents for what they believe or don't believe. You should be trying to sit down with them and figure out what the problem is and how you can come to a solution with the parents.
Well, and here's the thing, leading up to the September 20th protest, the unions thought they would get out and bully the parents. They don't really have long-term thinking, do they?
Well, why these unions were in it at all, I have no idea. It's not about workers' rights. It's about parents' rights.
Right. But when these unions go on strike, who are they relying on the support of?
The parents.
Bingo. So the next time that there's going to be a strike, especially for the schools, do you think these parents are going to be in support of the unions? 100% not. Because parents are going to be like, oh, I remember when you were calling me a bigot. Why would I support you? You employ a political agenda.
Well, and that was the thing, that video that got leaked of that union meeting. You have these teachers and these educators saying that, oh, no, we're not trying to indoctrinate kids. There's no agenda. And then you watch that video and there is very clearly an agenda. What are people supposed to think?
Right. And again, you should not be preaching an ideology. Now they will say, oh, this is grounded in science. No, it's not. It 100% is not.
And even if it was, there's certain things that young children cannot grasp. We think of our son and he still believes in Santa Claus. How he cannot grasp that there's no magical man coming down his chimney and bringing him Christmas presents because he's a child. There are certain things that are not appropriate for kids yet because they don't understand.
Would you think it was a good lesson to dissect a dog in a grade 1 class? It's science.
No, but that's something I did in college. You know what I mean?
Right. The point is there's some things, even if they are scientific, are not appropriate for kids of that age. And the argument that, well, they're going to come across like people out in the world and they're going to have questions. Fine. Then they ask their parents.
And as a parent, you tailor it to your child. You may have, for example, a 5-year-old who can understand things a little bit better than a different 5-year-old who may understand a little less. So you tailor it to your child, not only their age, but also their level of understanding. And who's going to know how to do that the best? The parents.
This is what would typically happen. A small child would come home and say to their parents, "Hey, I saw two boys holding hands. Oh yeah, they like each other. Oh, okay." Conversation over.
Yeah, why does Johnny have two mommies? Well, because some little boys have two mommies. Some little boys have a mommy and a daddy like you do. Oh, okay, done.
Like, kids don't need context. But you are forcing context on them. And that is the indoctrination that parents are so pissed about. And you know darn well what you're doing. Good people don't teach kids to lie to their parents.
Absolutely not.
And good leaders don't take sides when it comes to inalienable rights in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Good leaders protect them.